I'm Patti. I'm a jewelry designer here at Fire Mountain Gems and Beads, and today I'm going to be taking you through Project 7 in our Secrets of Wireworking series. That's these gorgeous chandelier earrings. In this project, you're going to be carrying forward what you learned in the last project of planishing wire, and you'll be learning to apply a hammered finish for that really beautiful kind of faceted metal look. You'll also be learning to make chandelier components and to make your own embellished ear wire. We're going to be using some copper jump rings, some antique silver rondelles in a couple of sizes of crystal briolets, some crystal rondelles, and some crystal bicones, as well as some 20 gauge copper parawire. So I'm going to pull off about 10 inches of wire, maybe just a little bit extra. I always like to cut a little bit extra and have more to work with than take the chance on not having quite enough. Okay, let's go ahead and get started making the top chandelier component. So first I'll take the end of my copper wire and my round nose pliers, and I'm going to grip the wire about the center of my round nose pliers, a few millimeters up from the wire, the tip of the wire. And I'm just going to make a little teardrop shape like that. Then about an inch down, let's see, I'm going to make another teardrop shape, just kind of bending that gently around. And I want the wire to come down at a bit of an angle, just about like that. Then you can see we have some beads at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and thread on a small metal rondelle. And they're much easier to thread on from the mat like this than to try and pick up when they're so small. A larger metal rondelle, and a crystal bicone, a large rondelle, and one more small rondelle. Okay, and I'm going to let those fall right against the loop that I made. Now we're creating this bottom loop that is a little more round. So I'm going to use my round nose pliers, and about 3/4 of the way up, I'm going to grip the wire right below the beads and just make a revolution around and try and come up at the same angle that I went down at. And there's a real gentle curve here on this wire. I might curve it just a little bit. Not too much. I might want to just adjust this out a little bit till it looks just right. Okay. Now there's another set of beads on this wire. I'm going to go ahead and thread those on a small metal rondelle, a larger metal rondelle, oops, the crystal bicone. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to have some control to pick these up when they're bigger. The large metal rondelle and the smaller metal rondelle. And just let those fall against the loop that I just made. Then I'm going to make the other outside loop. It's a teardrop shape. I'm going to grip the wire about halfway up my pliers, a little bit down from the beads. Just kind of bring that around in a teardrop shape, not all the way around the barrel. Let's do a little bit of adjusting now. Okay, so now I'm bringing the wire, the tail, back up so it goes right over that original teardrop that I made. And I'm going to clamp the wire with my nylon jaw pliers right here. And right below that original teardrop, I'm going to wrap the wire around. Now I have a lot of excess wire. Before I wrap, I'm going to trim some so it's easier to work with. So in my non-dominant hand, I'm holding very firmly the wire on the other side of the loop. Then I'm going to bring the wire up through the piece, the center of the piece. And wrap really tightly a couple of revolutions. Let me make sure that I've got a good grip on it. And I'm going to take my chain nose pliers at this point and just snug those up together and make sure the wire is nice and tight while it's wrapping. Kind of grip this again with those nylon jaw pliers. The nylon jaws are nice because they keep you from marring up the metal as you would with maybe a chain nose. I'm going to bring that wire back up through the piece again. Grab it with my pliers. And here I'm probably just going to hold the piece to make sure I get a nice tight revolution there. Then I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers and just squish those together so you've got nice even wraps. Flip it around to the back. And I just want to make sure it's nice and flat. The wraps are nice and close together. And I'm going to snip that tail off real close to the piece. And then I'll use my nylon jaw pliers to make them nice and straight so everything looks even. And I'm going to straighten this top loop a little bit. So I want everything to flow together. Just like that. Then we've got one of our rondelles that escaped here. We'll just kind of move that around and get him back in place. And I'm going to squeeze that loop together so it stays where it belongs. Okay, there we've created the top component. I'm going to set that aside. And let's look at creating the bottom chandelier component. We'll pull off, I don't know, about 7 or 8 inches of wire. I'll probably pull off 8. I like to have a little bit extra, then not quite enough. So about halfway up the barrel of my round nose pliers, I'm going to make a teardrop. Just like that. And I think I want to round it out just a little bit more. So I'll just pull it down the barrel of my plier a little bit. That feels better. Then I'm going to go ahead and wrap that off now so the tail is out of the way while I make the rest of the piece. So I'm going to clamp that in my bent chain nose pliers, and I'm just going to push it around. Grab another pair of pliers. I'll use my rounds here. And just go around twice like that, flip it over to the back, and snip off the tail right close to the piece. Then I'll take my chain nose plier and in a little circle go around and make sure that tail is tucked in well. It feels good. Okay, then I'm going to grab my round nose plier and 3/4 of an inch down, I'm going to make another teardrop. And I'm going to make a fairly large teardrop there, just like that. And then equidistant to the top of the first teardrop, I'm going to make a second one here. And I'm going to bring this tail over the front because we're going to wrap over the front. We want it to be the same. So I'll take it off and look at them and see if I feel like they're about right. I feel like that's about right. So I've got a lot of tail here, that's fine. I'm just going to cut a little bit off so it's easier to wrap. And then I'm going to take my bent chain nose pliers and clamp that teardrop. And I'm going to push the wire around about halfway and then grab my pliers and make that second loop around. My wraps are really nice and tight on the back. They're really nice and tight. If they weren't, I would take my chain nose pliers and just snug those up a little bit. And take my flush cutters, cut off the tail. And then just going around in a little circle and snug that tail in with my chain nose pliers. And there we have the bottom chandelier component. Next, we're going to go ahead and make the ear wire. So to make the ear wire, I'm going to be using Weber's Jumbo Mandrel pliers. These are one of my very favorite pliers to use. They make perfect circles and they're great for making ear wires. For this particular ear wire, I'm going to be using the smaller barrel on this Jumbo Weber Mandrel plier. Let me set that down for a second. Let's grab some wire. So I'm going to go ahead and work right off the roll, but for ear wires you want them to be very straight. So I'm going to straighten that wire first with my nylon jaw pliers. So I'm just going to go at it from a few directions, just strip down the wire and get it nice and straight, get any little bumps out of the wire. They really do show up in the ear wires. Okay, now I'm going to make a nice flush cut on the end of the wire. So just snip off 1 millimeter or so. So you have a nice smooth edge. Then I'm going to thread on the embellishments. I've got a little crystal bicone and I've got a small metal rondelle. So I'm going to go ahead and thread those on. Let's see, it's easier to pick the bicones up. And my little metal rondelle, I'll just thread on from the mat. They're little, it's easy to miss them. Let me get one here. There we go. Okay, then I'm just going to make a simple loop with the end of the wire. So about a third of the way up the plier, just going to grab the tip and make a revolution until the wire hits itself, and then I'm going to kind of kick it up so it's like a lollipop on a stick. And then I'm going to let those little components that I just threaded on fall against there. I'm going to make a 90-degree bend in the wire right against the bead, just like that. Then I'm going to take my Weber pliers and put the smallest barrel right up against the wire and make a full revolution all the way around. Now you can see that this beginning part of the wire is off at an angle. I'm just going to push that up against the Weber so it's not. So we have a full circle, just like that. Then I'm going to take my flush cut pliers. This is very important. You want this smooth edge against the piece that you keep because that's what's going to go through your ear. Cut off the tail there. And now we just have to create this little bend in the wire where you're going to thread that through your ears. So I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and flatten that and just kick it out a bit. Then to make sure that the ear wire is very straight, I'm going to use my nylon jaw pliers, and I'm just going to make everything on the same plane nice and flat. And there you have your embellished ear wire. So now we've got the 3 wire components made. Let's go ahead and add the hammered finish to the pieces. So we've got 3 pieces here that we're going to hammer. I'm going to set the first 2 aside. We'll start with the ear wire. So hammering the ear wire is very simple. We're just going to hammer the section from about here to about here. The reason that we stop here is the top section goes through your ear, and you want that rounded as to not cut your ear. So to remind myself that the only portion that I want hammered is that section, I'm only going to have that section on the block. As well, it protects this little crystal bead here from damage. So I'm just going to hold that off the block, and I'm going to evenly hammer with the domed surface of my hammer. Copper wire is very soft. Great. So we've just applied this little hammered finish here. I'm not actually going to apply the ball end finish to this one because the ear wire is 2-sided and you can only add that sort of finish to one side. So we're just going to leave this flattened as it is. Okay, next let's go ahead and add the hammered finish to the top chandelier component. That finish is going to be added to the edge of all of the loops. So to protect the crystal beads that are here, I'm going to put all of the piece that I'm not currently hammering off the block and only have the piece that's going to be hammered on the block. I'm using the domed side of the hammer and just gently flattening that back and forth. So a pro tip when hammering is to go slowly, section by section, and do a little bit until you get more proficient with precision. Let's go ahead and put the next loop on the block, making sure to keep that little juncture where the wires cross over off the block. You never want to hammer those because it might ruin the piece. Let's flip it around and we'll do the other side. Let's see, I've lost one of my little rondelles here. Once we hammer it, it will harden the piece so those will stay in place as well. Okay, so we'll go ahead and hammer this one. You want a nice uniform finish, so just go around a little bit if you need to. And then I'm just looking to make sure they look the same. You know, this side looks like it needs a little more hammering here, so I'm going to flip that around. So I'm going to go ahead and put that top loop on the block and hammer that. Nice and evenly. You'll notice that now there's a little gap here at the end of that loop. I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and just snug that in so it hits the wire. Okay, so we've got all the loops flattened. Let's go ahead and apply the ball hammer finish. So I'm going to start with one loop on the front side, and we're just going to use the tip of the ball hammer. And I'm going to go around the outside edge all the way around, and then I'm going to go around the inside edge. Make sure and go slowly with this until you're really accustomed to it. So there's no need to go quickly. It's better to get precision placement. So there's all the way around the outside edge once. I'll do it again. And I'm not using a lot of force. It's really light force. Another thing that's really important to know is to not flatten too much on the first flattening before you apply the hammered finish, because then the piece will be too thin. All right, I've done the outside edge, and then I'm going to move my hammer to try and get a little bit of that inside edge. So let's look at the result of that. So you've got these beautiful facets in the metal now that kind of catch the light. Okay, let's go ahead and assemble that. I've already hammered the bottom section, so that one is complete. So we have the 3 pieces all finished now. All we need to do is add the links and the dangles. All right, let's go ahead and create the links that attach the 2 chandelier components. So I'm just going to pull a little wire off of the roll. Set that aside. And I'm going to make a flush cut with my flush cutters, so I'll have a nice clean edge. I'm going to take my round nose pliers and just make a simple loop, a very small one. Just like that. Then we'll kick it up so it looks like a little lollipop on a stick. And I'll just kind of hand straighten that wire just a bit. We want the link to be nice and straight. And then I'm going to thread on the beads. So we've got a small rondelle. And then we've got a crystal rondelle. Aren't those beautiful? The crystal rondelles come in all colors and sizes. And you know, you can use any color beads for this piece. It would be gorgeous. Let's do a larger rondelle, a smaller rondelle, the metal ones, then a crystal bicone, and the last little metal rondelle. The other end, we're just going to make another simple loop in the same orientation. So I'm just going to make a 90-degree bend in that wire right against the beads. And it was a little far away, so I'm just going to correct that with my chain nose pliers there. I'm going to use my round nose pliers, and about a 1/2 inch up, I'm going to start rolling up that wire until it hits the beads. And then kick it back up. Then I'm going to use my flush cutter right in the juncture there to cut off the tail. And then I'll use my bent chain nose pliers on one side and my chain nose pliers on the other side to make sure they're going in the same direction, so you can see through both holes at one time. I have another one that I've already made up, so we'll go ahead and assemble those. So I'm just going to open up the loops on my links, and near the large crystal rondelle, we'll attach one side of the bottom of the chandelier component. Take the chain nose pliers and rock the tip of that loop back and forth against the piece so it's a nice tight connection. We've already got the loop open on this one, so we'll go ahead and attach that to the top chandelier component on the same side, making sure that you're orienting the hammered pretty side to the fronts. And I'll close that up with my chain nose pliers. Kind of opening it sideways a little bit and then closing it up, rocking it back and forth so we've got a nice tight connection. So there's one side, and let's open up the loop on the other link. Put that on the other side. Closing that up nice and tightly. And opening the bottom loop on that link. And you want to make sure that everything is facing the correct direction before you close it up. I like to, before I even close it, I like to hang it and just kind of look at it. That looks correct. Then take my chain nose pliers and close that loop back up, nice and tight. Okay, so we've got the body of the chandelier earring made. Now we've got all these beautiful dangles that really make the piece, these briolets. So these briolets are just attached with a little copper jump ring, so let's get a few of those out. And then we've got 3 of the small briolets and 1 of the larger ones. So I'm just going to pick up those jump rings, put them in my bent chain nose pliers like this. Now these are oval jump rings, you notice, so the opening is on the side of the oval. I'm going to flex that open enough to accommodate the hole in the briolet. Put that right in there. And I'll hang the one in the middle first. And I'm closing that jump ring back up sideways and rocking the tips against each other so you have a nice tight connection. Okay, and then we'll do the other 3 the same way. That'll go on the side bottom loop. It's a smaller briolet. Rock those tips together so it's nice and tight, they won't come off. Okay, opening that up sideways. Grab that other small briolet. Whoops. There we go. And then adding that to the other side of the bottom component. Close that up by rocking the tips together tightly. And then the last one is the larger briolet. Sometimes it's easier to reposition the jump rings when you're picking them up with 2 pairs of pliers like that than trying to do it with your fingers. I'm going to open that up just a bit wider because the larger briolet needs a bigger opening. And I'm going to attach that to the bottom of the bottom component. Go ahead and close that up nice and tight. Beautiful. The last thing to do is to go ahead and add the ear wire. So I'm going to take my chain nose pliers, open that loop up sideways, make sure that I'm orienting that beautiful hammered finish toward the front, and then close it up sideways, nice and tight, rocking that back and forth. And there you have your beautiful crystal chandelier earrings. So this concludes the 7th project in our Secrets of Wireworking series. In this project, you've learned to make chandelier components, you've learned to make your own embellished ear wire, and you've learned to add a ball hammered finish. Next project, project number 8, we're going to be making this gorgeous wrapped donut. In this project, you're going to be learning to wrap briolettes. You're going to be learning to cage wrap a donut and to add a cage wrapped bale. Thank you for being with me here today. I hope you've enjoyed this project, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.